Hooked on Art podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Hello guys, I'm super excited you are here with me today. The topic of the conversation today is about overcoming limiting beliefs. I've been searching for a person with whom I could talk about it, and I'm very happy to introduce you to Katerina Popova. She is also a Russian artist who lives in Philadelphia. Katerina Popova relocated to the United States from Vladimir at the age of 12. Kat is not only an artist but also a creative entrepreneur. She is the founder of Create Magazine, the Create podcast, and the coaching program for artists titled The Art Queens. She is also an author of the complete Smartist guidebook for artists who want to level up their marketing skills. Okay, Kat, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I'm very excited to see you here.
I'm so excited too. I'm very excited to connect with fellow Russian artists and I love your work. By the way, I've actually been following you for a few years and I'm so happy you reached out.
Thank you. The topic of our conversation today is going to be about overcoming limiting beliefs. But before we talk about that, please introduce yourself to those who have never seen your work and just tell us what you do.
Absolutely. I love this topic. And
yeah, me too.
I'm very much deep into that right now. So thank you so much for having me. I am Ekaterina Popova. I'm an artist. I am an entrepreneur. I'm a coach and I'm a dog mom. And I grew up in Russia up until I was 13 and I moved here with my mom and I studied in the American high school and university. And for the past decade, I've been painting interiors in my work and sort of exploring what home means to me, what belonging means to me through the lens of the interior space. But right now I'm actually very much into new work. So I don't know what I'm doing right now. That's a whole other new world that's opening. But aside from my art, I'm also the founder of Create Magazine and the Create podcast, and also coach for female artists looking to expand and build a beautiful life. So that's the short version.
We'll talk about all of that. I guess first question that I'd like to ask, tell me about your experience of being an immigrant, because I think most of us experience a lost sense of belonging. And how did you deal with that?
That's a great question. I think that's something that I've been really thinking about in my work. And so even now, I definitely found my community now, and I'll go back to how it felt in the beginning. And I think it took several years, and I always just tried to find my community locally. I think that was my big mistake. But thanks to the internet, I get to speak with people like you. I have clients from all over the world, not just America, from India. So I think my journey of finding belonging my world has been opening. Like belonging isn't just cultural or, even in terms of being an artist, it's just really finding your soul family. And when I first moved here, I definitely really wanted to instantly, find friends, especially since I was a teenager, and just, have a community, have people to hang out with. And I certainly made some friends, but I always just felt weird. I always felt like there was something I couldn't express about myself, and I couldn't explain how life was when I grew up in Russia. At the same time, I didn't belong to Russia anymore because I was so Americanized at that point. So I just always felt like this weird, unidentified blob that was trying to find her way. And I think art really helps you do that. Not that you get answers from art, but it just helps you to put your feelings out on canvas or paper or whatever you choose. But it definitely is a journey. And I think the biggest thing is knowing that it's looking within versus trying to find specific people that will help you feel that validation or that belonging. But of course, we are social beings, so it is important to find your circle. But it was quite challenging, I think, moving to another country. And I'm sure you had the same experience. How about you?
It took me very many years to process my emotions, and you're right, art helped me to to deal with that. Because the more I painted, the more I understood myself, what I could bring into this world. And you're also right about validation. I used to search for validation from the outside, but then over time, it kind of changed for me. So it's not really important what happens on the outside. It's more about, feeling at peace inside.
I totally agree with that. And the thing about outside validation, it is exciting when you win a prize or get, recognized by someone, but it doesn't last. You're
Exactly.
ready for something else
Mhm.
shortly after that. So, it is important to have that intrinsic sort of sense of peace, like you said, and connection to yourself that that unshakable part of you, no matter who's looking or not looking or buying your work. It's the hardest part, I think, of being a human.
Right. Okay, so we are going to talk about some of the limiting beliefs because it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for artists as well. And some examples of common limiting beliefs could be, I cannot draw people, or I cannot paint, I don't know, flowers. Money is bad. I'm not good enough at something. I'm stupid. I'm not pretty, and many more. So could you define what a limiting belief is, and maybe explain what limiting beliefs you had and how you deal with them? Because they constantly pop up. It's a never ending problem.
Yeah, I know. As you're listing that, I'm like, oh, I have so many even now that I'm working through, but it's
Yeah.
such an amazing topic. And, even with my clients, we're always trying to find new limiting beliefs because for every dream we have, usually there's that, the obstacle of the limiting belief standing in our way. So my definition of a limiting belief is it really is basic. It's the belief we picked up, whether it was from, our family or culture or society in general about what we can and cannot do, what's possible for us, you know, whether or not we're the right person to take on a project or start something, or, for a lot of my clients, it's like becoming self-employed or showing with a gallery. It's like a lot of basic stuff, but also as I'm going deeper into mine, it's actually like stuff that you're listing, like, oh, well, I'm not classically trained, so I can't possibly change my work to this, or I can't use this medium because I didn't study that in the academy. It could just be these rules we create in our mind. Some of the rules we just decided on based on our observation, and some of them someone might have planted in our, if you went to art school and you had a very controlling, very traditional or stuck in their ways professor that said you can't do this or you can do that, that might teach you to not do certain things just because of that belief. So I think there's so many layers too, but I think it's so important to be observant of our thoughts and to question them, because a lot of our thoughts aren't really our own. It's just from somewhere else. And just to see, is this what I really believe, or is this what I heard and I just decided to adopt it to my own life?
I think a lot of beliefs come from society and how it's structured, and each society values certain things, and so beliefs kind of stem from that. When I came here, a lot of things changed for me because I observed people and how free they were in their interaction with others. So I think a lot of limiting beliefs come from society, but also from families, because we all have roles within each family. Then when we start breaking them, it becomes a breaking point as well.
Totally. I can totally relate to that. Or I think going as far as saying like not having an example in your family of something that you want to do, and it just doesn't give you not that you're not hopeful, but it just doesn't give you any basis to go off of, right? Like there's nothing to refer your life to, and you're basically making up something brand new. So it could be quite confusing, and it makes weird interactions with family because they don't know how to help you or how to talk to you about your
Right.
path. So
Right.
it definitely creates a little bit of distance, I think.
So what limiting belief did you have?
Oh, I have so many. Do we have all day for this? Well, I think for me, I always just, and so I have like layers and histories of limiting beliefs. And for a lot of it was, of course, not knowing how I'm going to support myself because I didn't want to teach. Like I never wanted to become a professor, and everything in art school, everyone said you have to go be a professor or work in a museum or something very, steady. And that's,
Educational.
yeah, exactly. And I
Mhm.
just didn't see myself doing that. It felt really weird. So my limiting belief was that I couldn't find something that I love. It would take me years and it would just be really hard. And in reality, there's so many different ways. So that's just one example. Another limiting belief was I would, some of it was really silly. I mean, I would be nervous to go to an art opening because I just didn't feel like I looked like an artist. I don't even know what an artist is supposed to look like, but in art school, they would always be like, hipsters or super out there. And I was always kind of like, there was nothing crazy about the way that I looked. And I felt like I wasn't artistic enough on the outside to become famous, which now I look around so many different types of artists and like, what does that even, where did that come from? But of course, I let that go years ago. And then there's other limiting beliefs about my skill. I was really conflicted because I'm not a realist. I'm not traditionally trained, even though I really wanted to be. But I also wasn't like super contemporary out there. So like I felt like because I'm kind of in between, there wasn't a space for me to experience success and recognition. And I realized I proved myself wrong. I showed myself that there's enough space for all types of artists and creatives out there. But it's just making these absolute rules in our head, like what you can be, what you can't be,
Mhm.
as if we run the world and as if we know, you know, every type of person that might be interested in us. We don't see the whole picture.
Mhm. So how did you start overcoming them? Because basically it's all about overcoming the beliefs. First, you kind of have to notice how you think, then you process why you think that, and then you begin begin the work.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, exactly what you said. I think getting a few years ago, right around the time that I left my day job, I started to get really into personal development, and it was really new to me. I remember I started by, I think I was listening to, Think and Grow Rich and Bob Proctor and a few others like Marie Forleo. And it was like so new to me. My brain was like, what? Because when you hear of that stuff, you think like, weird gimmicky salespeople, you don't think that actually your mindset work is so important. So when I first discovered like quality self-development, it really just blew my mind. And I started to actually do the exercises they recommended, like, you know, writing out limiting beliefs, like things like we heard money doesn't grow on trees, like stuff like that. And I would just start really basic. And later on, once I had a little more resources, I hired a coach and had someone, go deeper with me because some things that we don't feel safe. Some things are just really personal and, maybe some trauma is attached to them. So just having another person there to guide you through it is really important if you have the ability to, or therapy is another great way.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I think just doing meditation, journaling, getting to know myself, not hiding from myself really helped me to start tapping into them. And finally, like the most important step is when you feel safe enough and you have identified the limiting belief, trying to disprove it to show yourself and show your brain that that is in fact not true.
Mhm. Give advice to our listeners, like how would you overcome a limiting belief?
Okay, so here's a really good example. Um, when I was younger, my mom, we grew up in the 90s in Russia. And as you know, it was a very crazy time and there was a lot of poverty. And my mom worked as a translator. So sometimes she would get a lot of money, like whether it was from Europe or US visitors that she translated for. And we'd have a lot of money. But then she didn't have work for a while and it would disappear. So it was that feast and famine. And just situations like that taught me that we can never have savings. We can never have that. So subconsciously, I kind of absorbed that into my head. And in adulthood, I just could never have savings. I'm so good at earning money. I'm always hustling. But for some reason, I would just get so frustrated. I'm like, why? Like, it's not even like anything lavish. Like something would break or an unexpected expense would pop up. And so anyways, I started to observe the cycle and the pattern of this feast and famine. And after I identified it, I did a meditation. For anyone listening, it was through Lacey Phillips, To Be Magnetic. She is, she does a lot of healing work. And I was like an inner child meditation. And I saw the exact moment where I truly picked up on this limiting belief. And I remember I was actually taking a bath and I jumped out and I told my boyfriend, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I know where this came from now. I understand this is what happened. And it was so dumb. He's like, I know, I could have told you that. Like, he was like, how did you not know that? And I was like, I didn't know. I thought it was all this stuff happening on the outside to me. So after I fully understood what was happening with this limiting belief, I decided to start playing little games. So I would just keep the money in an account as long as possible. It wasn't even big amounts. It was just like, it's safe to save. I created an affirmation. That's another great tip. Like create the opposite of that limiting belief as an affirmation, just to keep you on track. And then just practice keeping, even if it's just a small amount. And then when you see it's still there after a few days or a week or whatever the length of time is, like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yes, you can do this. This was not true. So just that's like a very basic example. And you can apply this to anything, art, business, money, health, and just like training yourself to talk to yourself instead of just accepting what's happening, because a lot of it's coming from us.
Personally, I did a lot of, and I still do, affirmations. And at first it feels very foreign because this is the idea that's not there. But because I keep repeating it, sometimes for months, it actually changes my perception and my thinking. And we all have a unique vision or unique perception of reality. And I think this happens because we all have unique upbringing. Yeah, and I think it's super important to observe what we think. And if the thinking process is negative, it's important to overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe in affirmations working too. I found a affirmation I wrote, and writing them down is really helpful as well. I wrote an affirmation when I first quit my day job and I did not know what was going to happen. It was a very crazy year. I wrote down how much I wanted to make on a little sticker, and I had these stickers everywhere. I put them in my drawers, in my studio. It was a Bob Proctor affirmation. It said, "I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm making, an amount per year." And I would look at it every day, and I forgot about it because now I have a different goal. And I found it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I like doubled this!" And it was crazy how your brain, when it has that goal or that vision, it can work behind the scenes to like get there. We don't even notice it some of the time.
If you enjoy watching and listening to this podcast and wish to support the artist behind all the work, help by sharing this episode and subscribing to this channel. You can also choose to donate any amount you like. All the links are in the show notes. Big thanks to all of you, and I really appreciate it. What was your most intense emotion and how did it change you?
Ooh. In terms of, I'm such an emotional person.
We all are, and as artists, we're very sensitive too. That's why I'm asking.
I think this just goes for the past decade. My emotion, like I would say there's two parts, the negative and the positive. The negative was fearing or experiencing like abandonment issues. So not feeling like safe or belonging anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then the positive was teaching myself through my new family, through community, that really deep sense of safety and belonging and truly being accepted for who I am. So I think the emotion, I'm trying to describe it. I need to pull up the feelings wheel. The emotion, I guess I felt like accepted. And not in a way of like, career or anything, but just like I could just be me and it's enough, even when I'm not doing great in my career or health or whatever, just it's okay to be me and it's safe to just be without makeup and be silly. And so I guess it's acceptance.
So how did you reach that point? I also dealt with abandonment for a very long time, for many years, and I couldn't get rid of it. I always felt it. So how did you get rid of it?
I mean, there's still traces of it. I notice it creeping up with certain unrelated things, not even in my personal life, but it's deep rooted because I think, if you experience it as a child, it's really hard to let it fully go, but I've definitely felt the light coming through the clouds. Same thing as with limiting beliefs, just trying to identify where it comes from. My coach last year gave me a really powerful question to ask myself. It was, what does this remind you of? And then when we can pinpoint what that memory or experience that originated this feeling is, it's easier to separate it from the present reality because it's not that it's happening to us now. We are safe right now for the most part. Or it's a completely different situation, but we tend to like put it all together with that original painful experience. So whenever I'm feeling it, I just ask myself, like, is this the same thing? Am I truly in danger? Am I truly like, is my life in danger? Usually the answer is no, it's just my feelings are hurt. There's something we can talk through or create a different way of dealing with it. As a business owner, I actually really had to deal with a lot of abandonment issues because even though it's business, it's not personal, even with like a client leaves or, things are different, like it would just really trigger me and me think like, am I not enough? Like, is everyone going to leave? Is everyone going to forget about me? And it takes a lot of strength to realize that it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's it's a fascinating topic. I don't know why it's so difficult, but it's still there for me. But you are right, because it doesn't take a lot of space anymore. It used to take my entire space, and now it's just there, but I know it's not important anymore.
I think it's still a little bit there for me too, but when it happens, it's quicker. Like when it first started happening, I think it was like in my late 20s, especially when I first turned 30, for some reason, all those emotions just started to they all surfaced and I had like a mental breakdown because of them. And I remember because it was so fresh and so on the surface, all that old trauma, whenever anything would happen that reminded me of it, I would feel physically ill and might be in bed for a few days because I couldn't process it. But now when it happens, I still have that yucky feeling, but it goes away like within a few hours. So I'm so grateful because it's so hard. So hard.
So how did you express it in your art? Because your paintings are very colorful and they're big, and you painted interior spaces. So can you talk about that, like how it connected to your thinking or emotions?
I don't think it consciously connected. On the surface, I was painting about home and belonging, and in a way, not that I'm discounting the work from the past decade. I'm just recently starting something new, but I think it was almost like subconsciously I was probably working through a lot of stuff while I was painting, because painting is healing in itself. But I never set out and said I was going to address my emotional wounds or traumas through my art. And in a way, I think the colors and the textures were like an escape from me. Even though some of my paintings, have some darker elements, I didn't feel ready and I didn't feel safe enough to openly explore my emotions. And now that I'm starting to do that, it's really hard. And and there's days where I don't even want to paint. Not that I want my work to be dark, but just being so open with myself, it's really not easy. And I have so much more respect for people, you know, even like Frida Kahlo, who just painted her pain like that. Like it's scary. It's actually really scary. So I think my work was more of an escape. Um, and I'm so grateful for my art because it carried me through and it supported me. But I think I'm ready for a new like a deeper relationship with my art. And it is really scary.
Good. You mentioned that you didn't want to be a teacher or a professor, and I think that's because you're actually a very good entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Tell us how we can overcome the imposter syndrome. How can we deal with that?
Oh my gosh, it's so real. When I was even last year when I released my first big 6-week course for artists, I was like, who am I? You know, because I'm also going through a lot of changes. And it's like, it's this temptation to have everything perfect and have your whole life be completely perfectly laid out before you create anything or create a community or business. And it's never going to happen. And I learned that just overcoming that imposter syndrome and realizing that you're not trying to solve everything. You're not trying to solve the world's problems. You're just trying to create something for someone who needs it. Takes the pressure off. It helps you learn so much. And that's how it is. It's like, just get it out there. You can always improve. You can always learn more and polish it. But if you really have a desire to build something, it's going to happen once you put it out there little by little, because I think imposter syndrome is just something that, especially women, will always deal with. And the only way to get over it is to just prove it wrong.
I think it's also a limiting belief. That's why I'm asking about it.
Yeah, one of my coaches, Kara Allwell, she shared something with me in terms of it is a limiting belief with imposter syndrome. She shared that you can only be an imposter if you are pretending to be someone else. Like if I say I'm going to be Veronica and I'm going to try to paint exactly like you and say that I'm you and actually do something completely outside of myself, like that's truly the only way to be an imposter, right? But it's in our mind that we think we need to be more than what we are, but in reality, each year we learn something new, and there's always newer artists or people that are new to the field that want to learn what we know, right? Like not everyone, this isn't even with education, but like, for example, building a community, some people might not want to be a part of a giant, massive community. They might want something intimate that's very specific and niche. So just realizing that we can't, comparison is a big issue with this, like comparing yourself to things that already exist, comparing yourself to big brands or people that have been doing this for years, and realizing that you can actually do a lot with what you have right now. And there are people that need it if it is on your heart to create it. Those have just been some ways that I've been able to push past those thoughts.
You mentioned the comparison game that also bugs a lot of artists, and I think people in general. There is also a lot of jealousy among artists. Some artists begin thinking, "Oh, I'm not good enough," and they start this jealousy game. And I personally know several artists who are really good and like they are so advanced. They got so many awards and they still feel insecure about themselves and what they do. So can you give advice about that, how this could be changed?
Yeah, it's a shame. And I think it all comes down to, well, I think it's really important to have creative boundaries. You know, it's definitely okay to have big goals and want to improve your skill. But like you said, even if you achieve all those awards, even if you're the master of your skill, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to feel good about yourself. So the only way to do that is to compare your own progress to yourself, right? Because that's all we can. That's the only measure that we have. Have I gotten even 1% better this year than I was last year? That's really the only measure, because everything else, everyone has a different story. Some people have a huge family they need to take care of. Some people have more resources than others. So there are so many factors for why someone is able to do something you're not. It's just not fair to yourself to have those kinds of expectations. And there's just like no rule. Like there's no rule for how to be a human, right? Some people have kids, some don't, some have houses, some have apartments, and you could still be really successful with your own vision of what your success is. So I think it goes back to what we're saying, like creating a vision for yourself that's unique to you, understanding what it is your version of success, because if you're constantly competing with everyone else, you're never going to get there. But like, what are your personal markers for what will feel good or what you'll be really proud of yourself for, whether it's financial or career? Just being really good about your own boundaries. I think that's been the biggest lesson. You can only celebrate yourself based on, what your measure of success is. Otherwise, I see it so much in our community. I'm really grateful. Most of our community is amazing and everyone supports each other. But once in a while, there'll be arguments, oh, this person copied me or they shouldn't have gotten that. And every time I see that, I just am like, no, like this doesn't even make sense to me. It's just a waste of energy.
I think it's important to have a vision and then basically break it down to small goals, because it's very difficult to get somewhere quickly. But if we break it down to small goals and then celebrate them when we achieve them, it becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I was just even talking in terms of art making, I'm starting something brand new, and usually I'm pumping out tons of paintings, but now I'm like, okay, I have to commit to something. So I hope to have 10 paintings by spring. So what does that mean for me? Each month I have to make at least like 2 or 3, just like breaking it down to the point where it becomes attainable and not scary.
So tell me, why did you create a magazine which is called Create?
Oh, the first magazine I made was, I was newly graduated. I think it must have been 2 or 3 years after college, and really frustrated because I couldn't find any work and I missed being a part of the community. And at the time I was volunteering a lot at museums and things like that. And I just really wanted my own thing. Honestly, it just felt like I was always that volunteer that had to ask for something to do. And I wanted to just have my own project. And I got the idea. My first magazine was called Fresh Paint Magazine. And this was back in 2013. And I just figured out how to do it. But I had a business partner that didn't work out in 2016. So I rebranded to Create. And the reason why I called it Create was because, at the time I was recreating my business. I was creating a life. I was also painting. And I just wanted it to be about like, the drive to create. And it also helped me expand beyond just painting, because my first magazine was mostly focused on contemporary painting from emerging artists. So it's been a journey. It's been a really fun journey. I'm so grateful I did it. Definitely a lot of work though.
What's the purpose of the magazine? What do you want to achieve with that?
So initially, I wanted to create a space for emerging artists to share their work. I didn't have a lot of places to apply, so I basically was kind of creating what I needed, even though I didn't show my work there. But these days, I love kind of having these conversations between all the parts of the art world, from curators to art fairs to designers and entrepreneurs within the art world, and just kind of having a conversation. And of course, our mission to have the emerging artists is still there. We have like jury calls for art, and we invite a guest curator usually to do the call. So it's just another way for artists to build, their resume and also get some support from the community. like through our platform. So it's definitely fun. The purpose, I think it really is like a community.
Okay. Let's talk about Instagram because it's a very big platform, and I think it's very important for artists to be there. I think a lot of us have a love and hate relationship with it. So give us tips how we can attract the right audience to sell art on Instagram.
My biggest tip is to not try to be more you. It doesn't mean that you have to have a personal feed, but just sharing, like, especially stories are really great, because I think a lot of us are visual, so we want our feed to look good. But I think Instagram stories and reels are a great way to just show who you are. What do you care about? Who you are outside of your work? You know, what issue it could be related to your art too. You know, maybe it's the material or the technique you use, or maybe it's like the ideas that you really care about, whether it is mindset or, you know, limiting beliefs, stuff like that. I share a lot of that with my audience, and I found that even my collectors are kind of becoming more part of my community, instead of like, here is a painting I made, like someone bought it, I have no idea who they are or why they bought it. Like, I'm starting to understand my people more. So instead of thinking of growing numbers and having a big account, like, think of actual real connections with humans. I know it sounds like really cliche, but I also have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, because it's annoying to have like 100 people follow you and like 300 people unfollow you, because who knows like what goes on that account. So the only thing we can focus on is, you know, just showing who we are, posting quality stuff, quality images or process videos or whatever it is that you do, and then just being as connected as we can, of course with boundaries, because it can be a really huge time. It cannot take up a lot of time. So just not worrying about it too much, because to be honest with you, I have like 3 Instagram accounts. I have more like personal ones just for fun, but I have like, so I have the big one for Create that has 180,000 followers. Then I have mine that has like 50. And then I have this one for my Art Queens community, and like it only, well, not only, it's still a bigger account, but it's because I built it with a very strong intention of what kind of person I want to talk to on there. That one gets the most comments and engagements, even though it's the smallest account. Just because I was very clear on who I want there. I don't want just empty numbers on that account. I want like real people that believe in what I believe in, or like the type of work that I like. So just really being focused and setting an intention for, even just setting an intention for how you want to use your Instagram, whether it is to make sales or to just have a bigger reach. I think it's okay to treat it like you do anything else. Like if you want to be healthier, you set an intention, you know, to be the best version of yourself. You can also set intentions for social media. I even have an affirmation for Instagram. I just say like, my Instagram is constantly growing and attracting my ideal clients and collectors, and just really feeling that and trusting it, even if it's not like growing viral, just it's growing at its own pace.
Very good. I mean, you talk differently on every account that you have. So what's the difference?
So the Create Magazine account, I don't really manage. I mean, I'll pop in there sometimes, but I have my assistants helping me with that. That one, we just share community work, things that were published, podcasts, you know, it's a business account, so I can outsource it. It has a system to it. My art account, I just post my art and I talk, you know, about what I'm doing in the studio or what's inspiring me. And on that account, in my stories, I do talk about things like mindset and, you know, just personal things that I can share. And on the Art Queens account, and most of it actually my assistant also does, but I will post motivational things on there that are helping me with my mindset. You know, business tips. That one is like specific for a female artist or female identifying artist that is trying to build like, you know, her empire.
Your Art Queens account is basically your course that you teach, right?
Yeah, it's my coaching. So I also have a membership. So a lot of it's the work of my members and like coaching content.
how do you attract the right audience to sell your art? I think that's the most important questions for artists to figure out, because it depends whom you attract. There are people who like your work, but they will never buy it because of different reasons. You know, your pricing might be out of reach, you paint too big or you paint too small, whatever the reason. So how do you find the right person to buy your art?
Yeah, this is something that is always, there's obvious practical ways you can start looking for your ideal people. So for example, here's just like one example is to go to Instagram accounts that have art that maybe is kind of similar to yours, seeing who's commenting. Sometimes you'll even see like little hints like, oh, I love this. This is in my house. Like you'll see comments like that, and just like seeing who that person is, like, and asking questions like, what is their demographic? Precisely where did they live? If you can pinpoint that information, what is their taste? What other things are they following or liking? Where do they shop? Just trying to understand who might be interested. You're never going to have a perfect avatar. You're never going to have a perfect, because every human is so different, but you're going to start to see some patterns. And a more mindset thing you can do is actually set an intention for what kind of collectors you want to have. You can start visualizing them, thinking about their personality. How do you interact with them? Really imagining them. And in a way, when you're clear on who you want to work with, when you start typing out your captions or writing your emails or even doing talks at a gallery, it will be easier for you to have someone to speak to instead of just saying random stuff into the void. You'll start sharing things that might be an overlap between you and your collector. Like maybe they care about a political issue, or maybe they really passionate about, ending hunger or something. Like you will start to see trends, because I don't believe that 100% of the time humans only buy something that's visual. I think they are also tied to a mission, a story, a deeper connection, because we have so many layers where we live on a physical plane, emotional plane, spiritual plane. So there's going to be multiple connections that happen with our collector outside of just the visual final product, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that goes into making art. So the more we can visualize them, also, as always, getting to know ourselves and what we care about really helps too, because then you can speak about it easier. But that's kind of what I found really works. And it happens in mysterious ways. It's not like a formula or anything. It's more of being more open to meaningful interactions instead of thinking of it as a transaction. Because I think art is so personal. It's not like buying a cute top. You have to look at something every day. So
I think people are attracted, like they have a specific emotion when they see art, and that's the main reason why they buy it. And also people are attracted to a story because they can connect the story to art. It's very intuitive.
it is. And I think art buying is intuitive too. Like I started recently collecting art, and the things that I really want to buy, I can't explain. Some of the stuff I buy, I'm like, I don't know why I like this, but I like this. And art is a language. So also we have to trust a little bit. That's where the faith comes in. We have to trust that the thing we created with its own language, someone else is going to understand it.
Tell me why you started your podcast, because you also have your own podcast.
Yeah, I think I was very shy my whole life, and it was something I challenged myself to speak more. And now it's like even weird thinking that I was shy, but I was so afraid to go to any gallery opening or to speak with people. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to have deeper interactions, because the magazine is great, but reading something versus talking with someone is a whole different energy. So that's really it. And I kept seeing little signs everywhere. I would walk on the street and there would be like a mosaic that said speak up or use your voice. And I was like, okay, I will do it. So it's just a fun way to keep going deeper within our community. How about you? Why did you start yours?
The reason is very similar. I felt very disconnected. This COVID times, it just it killed me in a way. I always struggled finding a connection with anyone, and I think I came to a point when I think it was a breaking point, because everything seemed to be very meaningless, and I decided that I would change my thinking and change my perception a little bit if I just start doing that. It's difficult for me to talk. I thought I would start this as a way of repairing the missing connection or the missing link.
It's beautiful. It definitely makes you feel more connected. I noticed that I no longer have that feeling that I'm missing out on something.
Mm-hmm.
Since I started the podcast, I feel like I have a bigger support network.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like I'm learning a lot when I interview artists and other people who relate to the arts. It's a very enriching experience for me. Who is your greatest teacher?
No, life.
Life?
I don't know if I have like a specific person.
Mhm.
I had a few great professors that were really helpful, but in terms of teaching, I think it's ourselves. I think it's when we are willing to listen, find out what it is we're here to do. It's an ongoing teacher. It's very, very intense.
Okay, here's another question, a difficult one, or maybe an easy one, I don't know. What did you chase all your life that you don't care about anymore?
Oh my God. Okay, there's a few things. I used to really want to move to New York City, and I was going through this deep healing journey and really just getting to know myself, because I always just thought I had to live there to have this perfect artist life that I imagined, that you see these people living, whatever. Anyway, and there's still people that love that, but I just wasn't honest with myself. And I thought, oh, I have to move to New York City. Like that was the goal. And I tried so hard to make it happen. And it was creating a lot of like problems in my relationship, and like because my partner does not want to move there.
Mhm.
But over the past year, I was going through healing. I stopped drinking, and I realized I'm like, I actually really love the countryside. Like in Russia, I loved my dacha. Like, what am I even talking about moving to New York? That's not even me. Like, I love going out into the woods. So just getting that honesty was like, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't. I would be so unhappy. So yeah, that was like a big one. And
Okay.
I love visiting. I love visiting. It's just I don't want to live there.
Very good. I think New York is very intense. And again, it's a love and hate relationship. I mean, I spent some time there when I studied art. I took classes and I commuted there for a long time. So I lived in State College, and then I would take a 6 a.m. bus to get me
Wow.
to New York for one class. And I stay there like for 3 hours, and then I go back, and I would come back at
Oh my
midnight.
God.
Yeah,
How
it
long
was
was that bus ride?
it did well because it was during winter, snow and stuff. Sometimes it took me 6 hours to get
Oh
there.
my God. Oh my
And on a good day, it was like a 4 hour drive.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very difficult.
God bless
But
you.
I felt so happy when I was in class, because I finally found people who had the same values or wanted to do the same thing. Because when I started learning how to draw and paint, it was very difficult to find anyone who knew classical oil painting techniques.
Yeah,
And
that's so true.
it was almost impossible. And it was like about 20 years ago. Now you can find a lot of people who do this.
Yeah. Where did you go to school in New York that you found?
It was Grand Central Academy of Art.
Yes. I just
Yeah.
started taking classes this
Mhm.
winter online because they had them. It's a wonderful school. My friend
Mhm.
is going there.
Yeah, I
It's
enjoyed that a lot. So I was just taking classes there, commuting.
oh my God.
And I also enjoyed going to The Students League of New York, because their education is based on painting from a figure. There is not that much education there, but because you keep painting from a live person, from a figure, it also helped me a lot.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but I love being there, but at the same time, I know how difficult it could be to live there.
Yeah.
It's so expensive and just overwhelming.
I think that as an empath, it's a lot of energy to process every day.
But
But that's amazing.
it's kind of like Moscow, though. I mean, there is a lot of energy there.
A lot.
Yeah.
Did you have a background in art when you first started taking classes at the Grand Central, or was this?
My first degree was in business, and I felt completely disconnected from that. It didn't make any kind of sense. And so when I came to the States, I was pregnant, and I kind of decided to fill my time taking a class. And so I went to a local community college. I started there at the community college, and I don't know, it changed me. I felt excited. I wanted to study. I felt happy. It was a very happy time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I have two more questions left. What people value and you don't?
When do like other people value and I don't? I think the traditional life, like the American dream. Not that I don't have big dreams. I definitely am very ambitious, but I think it's just for me, I felt really disconnected and judged when, for example, I wasn't married. My partner and I still aren't married, but we've been together for 13 years. We didn't buy a house because we're both building our careers and we're just investing everything into our growth. We didn't even get a dog for a while because we were just so focused. And so when people judge your path, I think there's obviously room for people to have the perfect life, like career, house, kids, second kid, whatever. But I think I just never valued that because I really had these big dreams and I wanted to give them a shot before I settled. And now I'm starting to get ready to buy a house, so it's different now. But I think just like immediately from college or high school or whatever, I just never wanted that. So I didn't value that structure, that social expectation.
What is the American dream for, in your opinion, and how is it different from yours?
I think it's definitely changing, especially after COVID. But I think the dream is to be comfortable. I think the dream is for a lot of people to have safety, but which they associate. And I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but just from what I've observed, don't leave that job, that 6-figure job. Like, you just stay there, even if it sucks, even if you want to die inside every day, like just stay there. They pay your bills. Like that is something that I just can't deal with. I would rather figure it out. I would rather let go of some things in my lifestyle than feel like a slave to something. I think my American dream is obviously being an immigrant, I want to achieve certain success, not even just for me financially, but just to show others, because it is so hard just to live here and to start a new life here. But I want to be an example of what's possible, even if you don't come from money or if you had no connections here, like just to build yourself up, knowing that you can always rebuild and try again. That's my dream. I think just being that example for people like me when I was younger, because I didn't really have a lot of people to look up to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When I look back, I think what I missed is the role model. And then I missed on getting a mentor, because I think things would be a lot easier if I had a role model and then I had a mentor to go through life. But I didn't. And I think these two things are super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that I have more resources, like if I want to learn something or if I need support, I think coaching is really powerful. When you're ready and you have a specific thing you want to work on. I think coaching only works if you are ready to commit to something with another person. But I remember in college, I would just so try to find a mentor. And I had amazing professors, but I never could say that one of them was like my mentor, you know? And I always wanted that so badly. I'm like, I just want someone to tell me what to do. But, you know, it's also good to be independent and make your own decisions. But I really crave that, like almost like, you know, a father or mother figure in terms of your career or art. It would be so lovely.
So what's next for you?
Well, I am just I'm actually rebranding, not rebranding, just elevating our magazine where we want to focus even more on the community. So working with the designer and copywriter and stuff, it's like very businessy. And of course, just figuring out what my next series of art will be. Trying to stay open and not put pressure on myself is the hard part because I just want to have it all done and get in the flow. But, you know, it takes time to get clear on an idea. So just being patient.
So do you have anything in mind? Like, do you want to switch from painting, doing something else, or?
I definitely love painting. I was playing with clay just for fun and it was amazing, but I want to just keep painting. I think for me right now, the themes are healing and nature. So just trying to take my feelings and my emotions and the energy and figure out what that looks like. I don't know what that is. I think some animals, maybe like more subdued tones, not so much bright colors. That's as far as I got. I just keep sketching every day and looking at art and going outside. So we'll see.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we quit?
Well, for anyone who's interested, we are always featuring new artists. We also have a podcast, and as well as have a membership for women identifying artists called the A.I.R Queens, and it's a coaching membership that is only $22 a month. It's going to be opening this fall again, and we have mindset work, business strategy, artists and curators and coaches coming in that always are sharing some insightful knowledge, and also our community is so supportive. So if anyone needs additional support, you can come hang out with me. I'm always on there in our Facebook group.
And so how can people find you?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question. It's artqueens.co. So you can also go to Instagram at the Art Queens.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Kat, thanks so much for taking a part and, you know, have this conversation. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a great conversation. I'm so honored to be here.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.